of that meeting. Leland?
All right, Ellison Barber at the White House standing by for tweets or any other news on this Sunday. We'll see you soon. Thanks, Ellison. Liz?
Well, despite the political unease over the Russia investigation, the administration is focusing attention on global hotspots from China to Iran. Here to discuss, Vice President of National Security and Foreign Policy at the Heritage Foundation, James Carafano. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I want to just get your reaction to Ellison Barber's reports before we sort of move forward and talk about foreign policy with the world. Your reaction to the tweet storm, is this what you want the president to be focusing on right now?
This is actually a pretty important issue for me. I work in national security. The credibility of our intelligence and law enforcement agencies, that's absolutely vital. We've actually had cases in the past where those instruments have been abused. FDR, for example, had J. Edgar Hoover spying on his political enemy. So it's not like it's unprecedented. So I think it's important that we get to ground truth here. And if people did something wrong, that they be held accountable.
They would, and what the consequences would, what would those consequences look like?
Well, I think we'd have to get to what's actually going on here. I think that's an important issue.
At the same time, there's also a lot of hot spots in the world. The president's juggling a lot of issues. I specifically want to talk to you about Iran because the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, will be speaking at the Heritage Foundation, if I'm not mistaken, tomorrow.
Yep, I'm not.
What could we hear from him, and what do you want to hear from him right now?
Well, so what we're going to hear is like there's going to be this big giant pitchfork, and we're going to he's going to stab it in the heart of, you know, all the criticism that came out after the United States withdrawal. The president has no plan B. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's just making this stuff up. It's just fulfilling a campaign promise. None of that, I believe, is actually true. If you actually talk to the folks that have been in this deliberative process in the White House, which has gone on for a year and a half about what to do about the Iran deal, and if you had listened, talked to some of the officials about how they've thought through, where do we go from here? I think Pompeo is going to lay all that out Monday morning.
You know why I think that's such a good point is because the president had not only met with the chancellor of Germany, but also the president of France. So it's not like this was, people say this was such an impulsive decision, but it really wasn't.
Now, look, I worked on the presidential transition team. We actually did not work on this because we said, look, cabinet officials are going to have to decide this stuff. I mean, we're not going to tell the new administration what to do. But almost from day one in the White House, this was an issue that the White House has been dealing with. So they've been dealing with it for 16 months. The president's been dealing with this issue for 16 months. They know what they want to do. And here's what we already know already. One is the Europeans are going to come along. We've already seen companies bailing on Iran. We've already seen government officials saying, I don't care what the EU says, we're not. Right? We're going to have to work with the United States on this. That's already true. We already know the Iranians are being backed into a corner. Their economy is in free fall. The leadership is completely divided on what to do next. They are overstretched in a number of places, and they're in Yemen and Syria and Iraq. They've got an awful lot on their plate. They're not prepared to deal with this.
Does it set the stage, and I'm sort of tackling a number of topics here because we don't have a ton of time, but does it set the stage for the meetings with North Korea? And if so, how influential is it? Well,
those are absolutely linked, right? And because they're both looking at each other, right? So you couldn't give a softball deal to the North Koreans because then the Europeans would turn around and say, well, what are you doing here? You're giving them something and you're playing hardball with the Iranians. And conversely, if you do a tough deal with the North Koreans and the North Koreans do a deal, the Iranians know that they're screwed.
Okay, so what do you want to see? Well, first of all, I mean, like you said, we'll hear what the Secretary of State has to say at the Heritage Foundation. But over the next coming weeks, what do you want to see from this administration?
Well, they just have to stay the course, right? I mean, in North Korea, regardless of what kind of wacky things the North Koreans say, we have a strategy in place, maximum pressure. You keep that strategy in place. You play the diplomacy out. In Iran, you put the Iranians back in a box. And here's what I think is going to happen. The Iranians are going to, when they feel pressured, they'll pull back in their foreign policy. My guess is they'll actually put their nuclear program on ice, and they'll basically try to wait Trump out.
I mean, let's see, right?
Yeah.
All right, James Carafano, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure we're going to have you back because, like you said, there's a lot that's going to happen over the next month or so.
Right, well,
so thank you. Appreciate it. Leland?